Okay, today is the final share of the first page of Perek Gimel until we get to the next page of Perek Gimel. But in the meantime, we're going to be talking about how the Moyach Shalat Alev. We spoke about how the mind controls the heart. From the intellect comes the emotions, which just shows you the incredible importance of a true Torah education. Because people are brought up with a true education, their mind, the way they think in a true Torah way, is going to control their feelings. And then, for the rest of their life, they're going to act in a Torah way to the utmost degree possible, as opposed to someone who has their parents maybe skimp on their Torah education, or sadly, they're not in a position to be able to have a proper Torah education. What's going to happen? They're going to get older, and maybe they're not going to feel so involved with the Yiddishkeit. I remember hearing a story of this butcher in New York City in the early 1900s. So, someone walks into the butcher store on the Lower East End, and he says, "Mr. Butcher, tell me, is this a kosher store?" So the butcher, a clean-shaven guy with a bow tie, he's like, "Excuse me? Is this a kosher store? Look at the wall. On the wall, he has this beautiful picture of a rabbi with a long white beard, a big black hat, and a black coat." He says, "That rabbi? He's my grandfather." So the guy says, "Mr. Butcher, if he was behind the counter and you were on the wall, I'd be quite happy." Fine. So it's very important, Jewish education. When a lot of people came from the old country to America, they put their kids in public school because they didn't have any choice, they didn't have any option, and their kids, it wasn't so good. There was some Yidden. I know of one Yid who was, his kids grew up in, I think it was Newark, New Jersey, and he homeschooled them. He didn't want to send them to public school, and they ended up from a Yidden. Anyhow, so we're talking about a Moyach Shalat Alev, and we're talking about how the emotions are called doubles. The mind is called mothers. Why? Because it gives birth to the emotions. Emotions are called doubles. Can be intense or soft. I'd like to say the following story, but we're going to have to say it short due to the terrible time constraints of this Golus. That there was a Yid named Rabbi Yaakov, and Rabbi Yaakov was an innkeeper on a small inn on the side of the road about 200 years ago. And at the end of the month, the manager comes. You see, the local Poritz, the landowner in Polish, they call it a pan. The local Poritz rented out the whole area to a Jewish man named Yaakov. And this Jewish manager, Yaakov, paid a big sum of rent for the whole area. And then he went around to every inn and forest and river and mill and rented them individually to other Yidden. So Yaakov, the manager, comes and knocks on Yaakov, the innkeeper's door, and says, "I need the monthly rent." And Yaakov, the innkeeper, says, "I'm sorry, I can't pay the rent. Next month, can't pay the rent. Next month, can't pay the rent." And due to the short time slot we have now, we're just going to skip to the fact that at the end of the year, he's about to get kicked out. And he runs his Rebbe, the Heilige Ruzhin, Rabbi Solev Ruzhin, and he says, I don't know what to do. The Heilige Ruzhin calls Yaakov, the manager, and says, "Give him another chance." And Yaakov, the manager, says, "Okay, I'm forgiving all your debt, and from now on you have a lower rent." Wow, what about tzedakah? That shows on chesed, on giving, on kindness. The next year he can't pay the rent a single time. Yaakov, the manager, says, "I'm kicking you out." He runs to the Heilige Ruzhin. Yaakov, the innkeeper, says, "I'm sorry that I cannot pay the rent, but I need to do something." The Heilige Ruzhin calls Yaakov, the manager, and says, "Got to do something over here. Got to help this guy live." So time ticks on. Yaakov, the manager, says, "I'm forgiving you, but next year we're not having another chance." At the end of the third year, Yaakov, the innkeeper, doesn't have a cent to his name, can't pay up, and he runs to the Heilige Ruzhin, and this time Yaakov, the manager, says, "I'm not coming," and kicks him out. Now after he passes away, he goes up to Shemayim. When he's up in Shemayim, it's about to get into Gan Eden because he did so many good things in his life until it's found out they kicked the Jew onto the street. So he says, "It's not fair. You don't understand what pressures I was under. You malachim in the base in Shamayla. You don't understand how much pressure there is in this world." So like, okay, we'll get real people. People know love halacha, and they called down the Bach and the Beis Yosef to judge his case. And both of them said, "Yeah, you're guilty. You threw a Jew and his family onto the street." So he says, "You don't understand. You've been in Gan Eden for years. You don't remember what money is like. I need to be judged by Neshamas in this world right now." So at that moment, the Tzemach Tzedek in the town of Lubavitch was sitting outdoors with all his Chassidim celebrating the inauguration of the new building in Lubavitch after the fire had burnt it down, and saying this story to his Chassidim, who are very interested in this fascinating story. He turns around to his Chassidim and says, "Well, what do you guys say? He's innocent or he's guilty?" So the Chassidim are all like, "Wait, what?" And the Rebbe says, "I say that he's right. He was under pressure and there's nothing more he could do in the moment." And then all the Chassidim realized it was happening right then and there. At that moment was what the Beis Din Shammai was deciding Rabbi Yaakov, the manager, and they all shout out, gerecht, gerecht, gerecht. His correct, his correct, his correct. And with that, Rabbi Yaakov the Shammai was allowed to go up. So we see from here that some people have kindness, but it's not intense enough. It should be more intense. And Rabbi Yaakov the manager had a soft kindness. He also had a soft harshness. He was really not a very harsh guy. But really, it should have been even softer. So we can see that midas and emotions can be intense or non-intense.